Hello, welcome to DDCEO. We've got an awesome guest for you guys to hear about. Another amazing story. Somebody with an idea that went beyond. And Michelle Longmire is in an industry where I'll often see scaling entrepreneurs. And I'm excited to hear Michelle's story. Michelle, welcome to DDCEO.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, Michelle, we've got we cover a lot of different industries, and my goal is to find people that are the innovators, people that are striving always to really solve the biggest problems that we have in our country and the world. And a lot of our problems we solve are kind of like my businesses. We solve problems for real estate owners, and not a lot of life saving going on in the solutions we give our customers. But we have a lot of fun, really solving major problems in our industries, and that's how our success continues to grow. But you, on the other hand, are solving problems that actually can really make a difference in the lives of many. And so I'm excited to hear your story and how you've come up with all these different solutions for what is really kind of a stagnant, in my opinion, a little more of a stagnant industry that doesn't accept change very easily. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself first, if you could, and then kind of how you came about the idea that you could be an entrepreneur. You're not supposed to be an entrepreneur, in my opinion. Okay, so if you could start us off that way, that'd be great.
Sure. So I think one of the things I've realized along the journey is it's kind of like, how do you identify in the world? So to your point, Gary, people probably look at me and they're like, why are you an entrepreneur? I guess, for my entire life, I've seen myself as someone who aspires to be an inventor. And, I come from a small town, Los Alamos, New Mexico. It's received a lot of attention with the Oppenheimer movie. And in fact, my grandfather was a nuclear physicist who was recruited by Edward Teller to build the hydrogen bomb. And he actually, was part of that project in the 50s and went on himself to become an entrepreneur. He left the world of nuclear physics in terms of the laboratory science side and founded a business that actually was an expert consultant in the weapons industry. And so when I think about myself, growing up in Los Alamos, parents were scientists. I really see myself as an inventor. And I think as an entrepreneur, I still see myself as an inventor, someone who wants to spend, I want to spend my life solving a hard problem that's challenging and that I think, really will add value to humanity. And being a physician, it's obvious to me that there's a real issue around the number of people suffering from incurable diseases or suboptimally treated diseases. So, I'm out to invent a solution that will really help people living with diseases and, suboptimally treated conditions to be able to suffer less and really receive medicines that can help them live a life that we all want to live, which is one focusing on the things we love to do, not, feeling sick or, having to focus your life on being in the hospital or, even in many cases, really leaving the earth before we would be ideal.
Okay. So, I've got only just a little bit of experience in this stuff. I invested in a friend actually who was on my podcast early on. That my friend, I learned that I got to meet him as I was looking for the best minds in neuroscience in the world as my wife had brain cancer. And so I also have a son that has cerebral palsy. My fourth child has cerebral palsy. So I want to know more about, the brain and who are the best minds when it comes to neuroscience. And a person I had dinner with told me about this amazing neuroscientist. I actually got his phone number, contacted him. He flew out to me from his DC office to Chicago, and we spent the day together. Him and I became very good friends, and I actually was one of the seed investors in a company that he started back a few years ago. The company he uses it's called Neuroscience. It's basically, the way I look at it, it's kind of like electromagnetic sound waves that he uses to basically degenerate and regenerate single cells in your body. And he focuses on the brain. The original inventor out of India focuses on all cells in the body, right? Anything, whether it be a cartilage damage, cartilage damage. Anyway, so what I'm finding is this: I'm an investor in this technology, and I saw my wife got treated, stopped her brain cancer, but eventually it grew again, and she passed away a few years ago. Okay, my son at 18 years old had major issues with anxiety on a daily basis caused by his cerebral palsy, and he got rid of that anxiety 100% after 1 month of treatments in India from this technology. So I became a big fan of this technology, and I invested in it. But what I'm finding is when I read up on your bio and all that, what I'm finding is the time it takes to get through the FDA with the double-blind tests and all that work that has to be done is incredible. And when we know that it for sure it solved many problems of the brain from so many people, and I've seen evidence of like dozens and dozens of people that have been treated and are in amazing shape today from this technology. So I want you to explain this a little bit to me on what you see as the roadblocks to innovation and invention, right? That you have, that if we're solved, might make the world a much healthier place, right?
Yeah, I think, when you look at the science itself, so, the basic science research, whether it's mRNA technology or what you're describing as novel treatments for, neuroregeneration, the science is really at an all-time high. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to cure disease and bring new treatments forward that is bigger than it's ever been. What I see as a bottleneck is the clinical trial process or clinical development process. And the reason is that, this is a process that is incredibly important to be done well for the very reasons of safety and efficacy and ensuring that when, we study these interventions, they really bring value to patients and that the safety of them is also on par with the benefit that intervention is delivering. But the clinical trial process itself is fairly unchanged when you look at the history of clinical trials. It has been disrupted from a technology perspective, and a lot of the approaches we use are the very same that have been used for decades. And so I think what you're alluding to is, the average timeline is 12 years, $2.6 billion. And there are a lot of treatments that just frankly, one, that's too long of a period of time. And two, for many companies, it's too much money. And so the rate limiters are really not the things that they should be. It's not that, does this drug work and is it safe and effective? Like, we need to be able to answer that question much faster. And that's what companies like Medable are after. We're saying this is an area that has been under leveraged from a technology perspective. Let's bring new solutions. Let's make this process faster and less expensive. Let's take more shots on goal. Let's not lower the standards, because the standards are incredibly important around safety and efficacy, but we can meet that bar and we can do it in new ways that really facilitate more shots on goal. So we get, more treatments to patients.
I like that. More shots on goal, right? I mean, we have to, in my opinion, we're very, very innovative in the growth in our companies. And, we're constantly looking at everything we can to innovate and do things better, faster, higher quality, all that. But what you say, shots on goal, right? I want to fail often and fail fast.
Right.
And I believe, if we're not afraid of failure and then we bring things to market knowing that it's not perfect yet, right? For us, it's not about health, right? So we can bring things to market and say, we got this thing we piloted and we think we're pretty good. It's going to cost you less money or no money to pilot it. And we're going to fail a little bit. We need your patience, but eventually you're going to have a product that's going to be exceptional. And for our industry, because it's not like life and death, we can do that. So we plan on failing fast and failing often. And eventually, after we learn from those failures, we have something of great value, right? So I can see where in your industry, it's not quite that easy, right? But how to be more shots on goal and still, right, not be a detriment to health and life, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think, the thing that's really important to think about is every situation, every disease has a different risk profile. And so what I see is, say you're living with glioblastoma multiforme, like a very aggressive brain cancer or pancreatic cancer, and there's something in a phase 2 clinical trial, and maybe you don't meet the inclusion or exclusion criteria. and there's some early data that it might bring hope for certain patients. That might be a situation where we should provide broader access because, these patients are terminal in many cases. So, it's a fine balance. And I think what's important is that we're able to take each patient, their circumstances into consideration when we're looking at the risk profile. And that's a hard thing to do at scale when you think about it from the lens of the FDA. And that's where I think technology can offer new leverage, being able to make more individualized decisions while also running a really critical scientific process. And, I think that's really the opportunity at hand.
I like it. So we've gone into some things here, but I want you to go back and talk about, your start and in the medical world, your mindset of invention and innovation, how that came about. And a lot of people, don't go to medical school if they think they're going to be an innovator and an entrepreneur, right? I know a few like that, but not many. And kind of tell us about that, where that came from and how that came about.
Sure. So I've always been really fascinated by the intersection of health and science. And so that's what motivated me to go to medical school. I wanted to understand the human body and human health better. At the same time, all along the way, I wasn't your kind of typical doctor, so to speak. I had experience in so many different research environments, whether it was, at the Los Alamos National Labs, creating new treatments or new ways of looking at the human body and disease. So when I went to medical school, I knew that I wanted to maintain my love of invention. And even in medical school, I did an internship at the National Institutes of Health with the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. And we were building nanoparticles to create novel ways of imaging disease. So you could identify cancer earlier. You could treat cancer, even in some cases, far before it would otherwise be able to be identified. And then when I went to residency at Stanford, I realized, hey, there's this whole world called entrepreneurship where you can take invention and you can move it out of the ivory tower. And as somebody who frankly found these big institutions to be highly bureaucratic and slow, and for me, I always was a person, I was a collegiate athlete. I wanted to set my own boundaries on performance. I didn't want, institution or bureaucracy to be what defined the pace I could move, or frankly, how much I could challenge myself to be at the edge of failure. And, I wanted to say, okay, how much could I actually push myself in invention to bring new value to the world? And I determined that I could challenge myself to a greater extent if I went outside of the boundaries of Stanford and really went at it on my own, to say, let's do it in the form of a company. Let's go from being a scientist to an entrepreneur, and under the same kind of drivers and motivators to improve human health, but do it in a new forum. Now, it's higher risk, to your point. My parents were like, you're, going to be a licensed dermatologist, one of the most, competitive and lucrative jobs in medicine. Why in the world are you going to this, new and completely foreign landscape of entrepreneurship where you have no guaranteed income? But it didn't really matter to me, to be honest. I just I knew that I could move faster. I knew I could be at that edge where I, was really challenging myself. And I knew I could do that in an environment that frankly would have a bigger impact over a shorter period of time by going out and forming a company.
Wow. So tell us about that. When were you in college or grad school? Where were you for your doctorate? Where were you when you started this?
So I went to medical school after undergrad at the University of New Mexico. And in medical school, that was where I really started to realize I wanted to be not only a physician, but I wanted to also be a true inventor. And then once I got to Stanford for my residency in dermatology, that's where I discovered the world of entrepreneurship. And even as a resident, I started to focus on building a company. So I started the company. I did a little bit of fundraising in my residency. I finished that residency, became a faculty member at Stanford. In the meantime, I started the engineering effort. I funded the engineering team, but of course didn't pay myself. I was, full-time faculty member, so I was able to spend very little time on Medable. but was able to eventually get.
When did you become a full-time faculty member? How old were you then?
I was probably 33. And I was able to, at that point, I loved what I was doing. It also motivated me to the direction I took with my company, because I was actually taking care of patients with rare disease, and we were researching, these conditions and also using therapies that were purposed for other conditions and looking at how they could help patients where there was no viable treatment. And so it was really through that lens I thought, okay, I should take this idea of a platform technology company and really apply it to creating a technology bridge for patients in research and the researchers. And, serendipity was I met a biotech entrepreneur who created a company called Pharmacyclics, which had recently been acquired. And he invested in Medable and enabled me to actually leave my faculty position, go full-time at Medable, and go all in on entrepreneurship.
So Medable, did you start Medable before this then? I mean, before you went on?
I started it in a very small way. I had a small engineering team. They had started to build the platform. But, I was a full-time faculty member. I was able to spend very little time on it. But it started to become clear to me that the opportunity was very important to create this technology bridge, and that in my world as a researcher, I would be able to use this technology, but it didn't exist yet in its fully realized state. So I needed to make the choice of stay at Stanford, be a researcher, really continue on important research efforts, or, leave that world and build this technology that I thought should exist.
Okay. And who are the customers you're going to serve in your mind, when you started and when you went off to say, okay, we're going to make this a for-profit business, right?
Right.
Who are you looking to serve initially?
I was initially looking to provide a product for people just like me, researchers, physician scientists who are conducting important research, really in a medical setting. That subsequently changed as we learned that a lot of the most important investigational research, new therapies, cutting-edge drugs, was clearly done by biotechs and pharmaceutical companies. So in one sense, our end user is exactly the same, because researchers are the ones conducting that important research effort, but the buyer of the technology shifted from being the researcher to the pharmaceutical company.
Okay, when we look at the pharmaceutical companies, I mean, most of these, the big ones, right, are slow-moving ships. They don't have this ability to invent, in my opinion, right, to invent as fast and be as mobile. Did you find that to be the case? Was that kind of your advantage in serving them?
Well, I would say that, when it comes to developing new drugs, the pharma companies are where they focus their expertise is what drug, what's the design of the clinical trial, and how do we think about this new intervention for human health strategically. They are not technology companies when it comes to digital technologies, by and large. So they actually buy technology to run those clinical trials from a number of companies. So there was a motion where they would be able to buy, technology that would support the clinical trial. With that said, to your point, they're risk averse. So doing that in a new way was something they weren't really willing to do. And we very much went from an edge case to a main case when the pandemic hit. Because what our technology does is it enables patients to participate in clinical research from their own home, not just in a very limited number of research clinics. These are clinical sites. And so once the pandemic hit, actually, we became a critical partner to the drug development efforts. And the pharma companies went from saying, hey, this should be done in clinics only, to saying this should be done by patients in their own homes in combination with those clinics. Now, the interesting thing was in the pandemic, even the doctors were in their homes. So it was a very interesting setting. But what happened was it changed the behavior. And frankly, it gave the pharma companies experience in a domain where they just didn't have enough experience to do this at scale prior to gaining that really meaningful experience. And so, yeah, it was really interesting. It really went from an edge case to a main case. And now what we see is the risk appetite has been essentially, we've shown that this is an effective, safe, and actually generates a ton of benefit. So now the adoption curve is much faster, even once, the world's operating largely back to the way it was pre-pandemic.
I mean, you've created an efficiency they didn't even know that, many didn't know.
Right. It wasn't unlocked, largely because there wasn't a willingness to try something new.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, yeah. So how long ago was that? So how long ago did you go off on your own?
Okay.
And it's been 8 or 10 years, or all this event?
Well, let's see. So really about 2018, I went, and said, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm going to, leave the world of research, 2017, 2018. And then we started pivoting the company from selling to researchers only to selling into pharmaceutical companies like 2018, 2019. And we started to scale that up and then saw a lot of demand for the product in 2020 and have taken those learnings and now really are going, at a much greater scale and have now, been a partner to biotechs and pharma companies in over 300 clinical trials worldwide.
Wow, cool. That's awesome. So when we think about, what's the coolest innovation that you've been able to be part of over these last, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, depending on, whether it be in, at Stanford or on your own right now? What's been the coolest innovation you've been able to be part of and invested in?
Yeah, I mean, you have to imagine in our shoes, we were kind of like the little engine that could. And I think when I first started fundraising, no one was interested in this area. And when you fast forward to where we are today, I mean, frankly, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about the next blockbuster drug, whether it's, for weight loss or it's for breast cancer or it's for brain cancer or it's for a rare genetic disease or it's for a COVID therapy. To think in many of those cases, we were a part of that, it's pretty mind-blowing. So I think the greatest innovation is actually the impact to patients of the drugs and being able to be a part of that process in a way that adds benefit to the patients and to the drug developers. That's, a totally new type of value that we bring to the table. But it's really the impact of the patients. It's amazing what these therapies can do, but it comes back to how do we enable more shots on goal? And that's really what we're after accelerating that process, because we know there are many medicines in the development, in clinical development, that have promise, but the process needs to be faster and it needs to be less expensive.
How much faster do you feel like it's come in the last 4 years, 5 years? I mean, to bring something. Yeah.
We've shown that we can reduce the timeline by, essentially what equates to across a drug portfolio of almost $1 billion of new revenue. And now we're pushing much harder on, let's take this from, so basically here's the way to think about it. The timeline and the cost yields only at best about 55 new drugs approved a year. And last year was actually sub 40. And this number has been pretty much unchanged for almost 15 years. So what does that say? It says that technology isn't providing a huge amount of leverage. Our goal is to take that, say, from an average of 50 to 500. And the way we do that is by really radically reducing the cost and the timelines. And so our innovation has already shown a significant cost and timeline benefit, but we're leaning in. We're saying, where does the timeline still lag? How can we deploy technology to improve that significantly? I think to get it from 50 to 500, it's going to take us another decade, but I don't think there's another team in the world who's as focused on this specific goal.
What type of team have you built? Tell me about your original. You have a partner, is that right? You have in the business, and tell me about that. How that came about, and then tell me about the type of talent you have to be focused on bringing in every day.
Yeah, so we have a team. Our original co-founding team still operates the company every day. I really serve the kind of visionary expert on the life sciences, the medical meets drug development. And then our team is an expert combination of cloud technologists, came out of Salesforce, understood how to implement cloud platforms, to, experts who were really early in on the use of mobile. One of our co-founders developed the first application that was ever in the App Store. So, way back. And we all came together and said, like, this has to be different. And let's, really show the world something that is consumer scale research. And that's what we went after. Now, what's exciting, as you look where the company is today, it went from very much basically 4 core people to being over, hundreds of people who day to day work very hard on the mission, which is to enable effective therapies to reach patients faster. But I would say that the original motivation and drive and relentless pursuit culture still exists today. And it's a big differentiator for Medable. Every single person at Medable is here because of the mission.
Tell us, how do you describe that mission? Okay, when somebody comes on, you're hiring some great talent. They want to know, what's this all about, and why should I come to work for Medable? What do you tell them?
So one, I think, our mission to enable effective therapies to reach patients faster with game-changing technology is something everyone in the company knows. I would say that, our culture is really defined by two things. Our motto, which is find a way, always apply your very best talent to solving hard problems. And then the other kind of defining attribute of our culture is something that's really around teamwork. And it's, be the best teammate and fiercest opponent. So we know that, the world and in some senses doesn't want change. And we know that we have to be very competitive in the value we create. We have to be not just, 2x beyond what the status quo provides, but literally 10 to 100x to drive change. So this be the best teammate and fiercest opponent is a very strong part of our culture. We want to win, and we want to show the world that we can create the value that we've promised, to the world and to the shareholders.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you do those things well, then you hire people that really believe in those values, nothing's stopping you. Especially when you look at your passion to lead and your passion, to solve problems. It's a no-brainer that you're gonna find great people that want to work in your business for you because of who you are. I can't imagine anybody more passionate, youthful, energetic, passionate than you are as a CEO of a cool company like this. So how many people do you have in your team nowadays, Michelle?
Yeah, we're 420 or so. And I would say, the defining attribute across these people and our team members is that just relentless pursuit of the mission. And, one of the important aspects of our team is, I agree. And I thank you so much, Gary, for your kind words. But really what makes it fun is that the people around me are higher caliber than me in many categories. And that's what makes a great team. And I thought, when I was a college soccer player, one of the things that made it amazing is I wasn't the best player on my team. I got to learn from other people who were far better. And at Medable, I would say every day I get to learn from people who are experts in drug development. They've been doing it for 30 years. They've run some of the most complex clinical trials in the world, or, they're experts in AI and they've built some of the most important solutions in the category. So bringing those two worlds together, the DNA is life sciences meets technology. We really have some of the best in both worlds, and I think are unique in how we bring that value together.
That's amazing. And what you said is so true. And you can see that in you. You're going to find amazing people that want to work with you, with you and your team. Because any great leader always wants to find people way smarter than them in every category they possibly can, or all categories. Right? I mean, that's been my goal all along. I barely made it through high school, right? And I'm blessed. I've got many PhDs and great engineers and civil and structural and mechanical, as well as we got some amazing AI PhDs. Our engineers are computer engineers, specifically AI related, that are amazing people, right? That they can just run circles around in so many ways with so many different things that they're passionate and educated in. But again, it takes a team of people that constantly want to surround themselves with people that are smarter than them to pick up on the weaknesses they may have, right? To make the team amazingly strong. And I see in too many companies that don't grow, maybe a leader that doesn't really feel comfortable hiring people smarter than them, right?
Yeah.
And or maybe the leader is of the same mindset we're talking about, but then they hire people that are get political. They want to protect their position. Therefore, they're not going to hire somebody that's a lot smarter than that, right? So again, to build a culture where people feel very comfortable and very confident in doing what you're saying, it sounds easy, but it's not easy. And to continue to stay focused on that as you grow from 400 teammates to multi-thousands of teammates, right? Is challenge really begins. So
it's interesting for sure, because I would say also I've also gotten that wrong in this, from the sense that you bring in someone, they've got this incredible CV, you think they're going to get on the field and be this incredible player, but they don't pass the ball when they should pass the ball, or they take the glory when there were a lot of other people behind that win. And so I think that I've learned as a leader, you definitely can't assume that others will operate with the same values. You've got to test that hard, ideally before you hire someone. And then if they're not a fit for that culture, you've got to be willing to exit that person, because it really brings down the team morale when there's an outlier, more ego driven. And I think that it's really critical. It's something I've learned as a leader, that you've got to have, no ego. It's all about the team outcome.
Yeah, it's a great balancing point, right? When you have to have great people that know how to lead, that know how to be objective also, and love objective people, talent around them, right? Challenging everything that you're doing in the most positive way. But then sometimes you come across people that are just negatively objective about everything, and really aren't there to make the team better, but to maybe prop themselves up or something, right? So it's a balancing point to measure the character of people around you, and it all comes out, right? It doesn't take long before it really comes out. But to be on a team, is some people are great at that, but to lead a team and take accountability for that team is the next step for anybody, right? And so I just see it as team players are necessary, but I want team players that want to lead the team at one point and take accountability for that team, and that's where that's where you got to figure out who's built for that, right?
Totally.
That's cool. All right, so when you look at the future of what you're doing, right? When we look, let's say 5-10 years on, it's amazing the speed of growth you've had already in the short period of time of what are 5 years, 6 years, whatever, right? I mean, what does 5 years bring you? What does it look like in 2028 for this great company you're building?
Yeah, I think again, like, what are the outcomes that we would want to see at that point? And it really is progress on that number of drugs approved per year, because we've been able to take more shots on goal. And what excites me is, over the last several years, we've learned so much about where technology isn't leveraged to its full potential. You combine that with what we're seeing right now in generative AI, and why that's important is, that brings new leverage. The problem we solve is this drug effective? And the way that's answered is through evidence, right? It's patients participating in these clinical trials, using these medicines, sometimes on a daily basis, and being able to capture the evidence that answers the question, does this drug impact that person positively in the course of the disease? And so when I fast forward to 2028, I think AI will play a bigger role in generating that evidence. I think today, when we look at a clinical trial, you've got a lot of people who are in that trial, some of whom aren't even taking the intervention, the investigational drug, because you need the control arm. That will go away. Every person, I think, will be able to be on the investigational drug, and the evidence that's needed to look at the control, what you were saying earlier, that randomized double-blinded experiment, will be able to use generated evidence or real-world evidence and combine these data sets, the patients who are on the investigational drug, with new types of data to answer that question faster, to answer that question in a much lower cost way, So I think in 2028, we're going to be able to point to more drugs approved a year, faster timelines to cures for disease. And I think it's going to come down to new technology leverage being applied to the problem.
I love it. I love it. It's going to be so cool to watch. And you know, for my industry, we've invested bigger than anybody else in my industry on AI. We built a company right now, a technology company. You know, I'm from, the kind of blue collar, dirty jobs, right? Paving concrete, paving asphalt, roofing, doors and docks. We have a bunch of different companies that do work in the facilities industry. And so these are blue collar jobs. And there's some engineering and stuff as well, right? That we like to lead. But overall, these are businesses that don't grow that fast, right? And to serve our customers well, we started giving away world-class engineering to our customers, the biggest building owners in the country. And we started piloting using drones and artificial intelligence to assess the condition of their properties and building the best engineering we could find in the world, best civil engineering, structural engineering we could find in the world, to load into the drones basically. And now, 7 years later, we have a company that's leading the world when it comes to assessing the condition of properties like big facilities for Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, and many others. And this business is our fastest growing business by far. And it's also adding crazy value to all our other businesses. Because as we serve our customers better, faster, and for less expensively than any competitor in the world, now these customers we're getting to know very well. And so now we're paving more parking lots for them. We're doing more roof maintenance for them. We're doing more more business with them, right? Because the trust that they have in us and the love and the passion they have for the new technology that's making their lives easier, right? So for us, we're usually we've always been about technology in the field and how we do things better, and we're big into 3D technology in the field and thermal imaging, all kinds of different things in the field. But the AI business that we're building is incredible. And it's taken us to all over. And if we didn't have the mindset of, we're going to find people smarter than us, there's no way we've done any of this, right? Because everybody's smarter than us. My son is pretty advanced in this space. My 36-year-old son runs all our companies nowadays. But gosh, I definitely wouldn't have hired anybody if I said I had to be smarter than them, right?
Well, it's an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, I also think, we have this way of kind of like, well, probably not even ourselves, like the entrepreneurs remove the box they've been put in. But like, you were saying earlier, you put yourself in this box, like, I think you said you didn't finish high school, but clearly there was a box there that you...
No, I finished barely.
Okay, barely. I should correct. But the point being, like, the world applies these, limitations from a societal perspective, right? But entrepreneurs say, screw that. There's so much more out there. And I know, I say, for example, want to apply myself in areas beyond medicine. I want to challenge myself that way. And that's where you really learn your actual potential. So I would say, odds are, Gary, you're probably as smarter than so many of the people you're referencing. And that's how you got to where you are. But also to your point, you want to surround yourself by the greatest and then, converge those talents in new ways that you can really apply to the hardest problems that haven't been solved.
So you said something very important, the greatest. If you want to be successful in anything, if you're competitive, you're a college athlete. I'm a very competitive person. I was just a high school athlete, but I'm very competitive in anything I do. And I want to win, right? I want to win. I want to build a team and I want to win. Okay. But I got to tell you, I found, and it took me probably 20 years to figure this out. And you're already figured this out. Okay. But it took me about 20 years to figure out, if I stop competing with my regional competition, let's say, people in my city, my state, and I start competing with people that are the best in the world, I can become world-class. And my customers probably would want me to do would be more raving of customers to me if I could bring them world-class engineering and world-class products and services. That's exactly what I did. I joined an organization called YPO. Have you heard of YPO?
Yes.
Okay, so you're still a kid. Are you in it yet?
No.
Okay. All right, kid. You should be thinking about it, because with your mind and your nature and wanting to solve problems, I'm very confident YPO is one of the best organizations you can join, because you've got thousands, and it's about 25 or 30,000 CEOs across the globe that are part of it. Probably 60% are American and 40% are otherwise. I got to tell you, I've gotten I've been able to find the best engineers in the world because of my relationships in YPO. Best engineers in the world in my space weren't in America. They're in Germany, Israel, Latvia, and other places of the world, because America has become a very regulated world where the specifications that our engineers they go by are built by often lobbyists and unions and people that don't always want things to progress so fast, or don't always want pavements to last forever, right?
Wow.
Where in Germany and Israel and Latvia, where I met some great engineers, they were actually trying to mimic Roman concrete. And so I get to know them, be friends with them, understand what they're doing to mimic this 2,000-year-old concrete. And today, that's what we do. We build pavements that we think will last hundreds of years and maybe 2,000 years, but way beyond anybody's life expectancy that pays for the product, right?
Wow.
And so either way, I'm confident that it's taking our mindset from being, the competitive level that competes with the people right in front of us, the competing the competition that's in our conference, let's say, in school or in our region in business, and saying, who's the best in the world, right? And say, how do I find the best in the world, and now how do I befriend them, and actually understand what makes them world class, and then actually compete with them, right? And all very transparently, by the way, because if you're world class, you really don't care, and actually you're very helpful to somebody that wants to be great like you, right?
Right.
So anyway, that's what I found to be the case, and again, for you, you're doing it already, but how cool it would be to find the best minds in the world through an organization that is all about that, right? And so, if you're ever interested in YPO, I'll be one of many sponsors that would want to sponsor you, because you'd be a great,
Well, I love that. It's really interesting. I do think, one of the, I'd say, critical success factors of Medable was the fact that, I was in Silicon Valley, and you're in the world-class arena, and not to say we were at that level at all in the beginning, but suddenly, your sights are set on something that's so big because that's the ecosystem you're in. And I think that is a really big part of human performance, is that, the environment you're in can really define the boundaries, because that's how the human mind works. And you want to be in that environment where the boundaries are, the biggest potential opportunity possible. And then you can kind of really see, how do you get there? How do you build that company? How do you become that great CEO? And I think it's a really important, and kind of hidden success factor is the world that you operate in, ensuring you're in that world-class arena. And even if at the very beginning you are absolutely no one in it, I'd rather be in that arena to understand where I could go and to learn, from the absolute best.
100%. I learned early on, as I worked as a young guy and my businesses growing from very small, I love people, right? So I just love hearing people's stories, whatever they are. But I found that when I asked people, bluntly, how did they gain their wealth? When I saw somebody with money, I saw somebody with a nice house and a big business, I said, how'd you do it, right? Most often, the people that would spend the time to tell me how they did it were people that actually really built it. And they shared their experience, and their experience became another vision that I had on what success could look like, right? And I could always take a couple nuggets from those experiences that would make me stronger in what I was building, right? And so, and oftentimes I would get people who would say, mind your own business, guy, kid, mind your own business. I'm not telling you how, but very often those people maybe didn't have the experience of actually building something, right? So I guess this podcast was built on that same concept. The reason I do this, I had a mentorship organization for some time that a nonprofit that I had that we built and did very well. And then I went home to be with my wife, so I couldn't be part of it really any longer. The mentorship still goes on from many of those people that we put together to mentor young people that needed it, right?
Wow.
Right. This podcast, the same thing. We've got now it's 85 or 90 stories like yours and mine that anybody can listen to. And when they listen to them, I guarantee you, their mind grows, and they're in a world of a little bigger mindset than they might have been otherwise. And that's what creates, great stories and success. But more than success is, my opinion, is the problems we solve in our lives that can make the world a better place, when we're gone, right?
Yeah.
I think that's our goal in life, and that's God puts us on earth to basically say, let's see what you can do. Can you make that chunk of land better, or are you going to make it worse, right? Yeah. And I think entrepreneurs, if they have a heart to serve like you do, very evidently you do, okay, you're gonna make the world a way better place than when you got here. And so that's really awesome. So,
well, thanks, Gary. It's a work in progress, but I feel like I am spending my time on the right things, so that's good.
Absolutely. Okay, so I like to get Chris involved, asking a few questions. He's patiently he's my producer, but he patiently waits, and then he asks some questions here in the end. I also like to pull out different nuggets that Chris sees as learning opportunities or little nuggets of success that he saw. And so, Chris, are you ready for that?
Absolutely. Michelle, this is awesome. I so want to live in a world where we have 500 new treatments per year instead of 50. That sounds awesome. My cousin recently, maybe a year ago, was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and they gave her a 14% chance to live. And her, kind of traditional doctor team said, hey, we'll start with chemo for 6 months and check in after that. And she's like, that doesn't work for me. I want like as many options as possible. And she ended up, finding some other folks who were like, no, there's a new treatment called immunotherapy, and they're finding a lot of benefits for people with your type of cancer. And this drug just came out like 2, maybe 3 years ago. And because she was able to get that drug and some other therapies, she 2 months ago is 100% cancer free.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah, she's healthier than before. And it's like, how many people had to pass away because this drug took too long?
Right.
Well, go through the review cycle.
Right. And I mean, also cheers to her for doing something new, to putting that pursuit in of, even finding a new doctor. Because one of the things that is a driver of these long timelines for clinical trials is many people don't have the option in front of them. And many people don't want to go with something new or something unproven. So, an important, I think part of the story is like all the patients who are part of the clinical trial that made that drug possible. Those people are really heroes, because they did something pretty much unproven at that point.
Yeah. So, do you have any advice or thoughts on how to kind of navigate the old guard here? Because they seem pretty entrenched.
Yeah, and by old guard, do you mean the institution? Do you mean,
I mean, like I was flabbergasted that the entire cancer treatment industry is for profit, and the average cancer patient makes the facility like $1 million. And I'm like, that's not going to make them very open-minded to new treatments. I imagine just the fact that your team is coming up with all kinds of new treatments, that there's a lot of bureaucracy or anything like that. A lot of palms are going to be less greased after you.
It is such an important, part of, I think, change is, and I see this as a physician, being able to have patients have the information and the optionality. I think that medicine as an institution has historically underestimated the capacity and capability of an individual to make the decisions on their own behalf for their health. And so, yes, there's these layers of challenge and headwinds and red tape. One of the most direct paths is that we can provide really critical information to people directly and remove some of those layers of bureaucracy so that at a minimum, they can take it into their own hands to the best of their ability. Now, with that said, they're still going to run into walls, right? Like some people can't go switch a doctor because of their insurance. There's still far, far, far too many barriers. I think as a company, we have to be very focused on where we apply, our like resources to solve a problem. But I do think that as the timelines come down and the cost comes down, and we're already seeing this, we unlock the ability to develop therapies in areas that weren't formerly financially feasible. And that's a really important part of, our strategy, is to say, okay, now maybe you can actually create drugs for diseases that were so rare there was no real commercial opportunity, or categories where the treatments are very low cost, like antibiotics. And so absolutely, we need to have a world where the medications are less expensive, where the access is far more universal, and where people really have optionality that aligns with their own individual, values and the decisions they want to be able to make.
Awesome. Yeah. Love that. And we always get excited, when we have a female entrepreneur on the program. We always strive to try to have as many female entrepreneurs on as guests as possible. Do you have any advice or tips for our listeners that are up and coming female entrepreneurs, how to succeed in this often male dominated industry?
Totally. It is a man's world, I'll have to say, especially when you look at, the fundraising environment and, but I think that it's really a mentality of to really stay in the game. You're going to get so many no's. And I think that the data shows, 2% of venture capital goes to women, 98% goes to men. So we're going to have far more no's. And I think that does eliminate incredible entrepreneurs on their journeys. I think that what I found, and believe me, I've had so many no's, is that you just have to stay in the game. And I do think that, it's important. Part of one of the, motivators for me is I want to show the world that like entrepreneurs can look different than what they thought of in the past. And I found this in medicine. When I was young, there were very few women in medicine, actually. But then as I started getting into, as I started, going through my education, I would see many women, right? And then suddenly your frame of mind is, I can do that. And so I think it's also important for us to get an unlock conceptually by people being able to see people in the job that they subconsciously relate to, because they actually identify with that person. So, one of my motivators is to just be a new face of entrepreneurship so that the many women to come can just know they can do this. There is literally nothing special about me outside of my absolute insane determination. I think Gary said it, like, we all want to be around smarter people. We want to learn from the greatest. The one thing I can say is there is not a soul who will work harder and who is more determined, but that's a choice I make. So, I just want women and females in up and coming entrepreneurs to know, there's really nothing special. It's just determination. In my opinion, I think that's the biggest differentiator.
Yeah, that's awesome. And anyone can grow their determination and just not stop until they succeed. So that's brilliant advice. Awesome. So, my nuggets of wisdom, and there were a lot of them: fail often and fail fast. Create a product to solve a problem for yourself, and others will be interested. The real question is, how do you enable more shots on goal? Align your team around a mission, and then everyone comes to work every day as motivated and excited as you are. Be the best teammate and fiercest opponent. That's I should write that on my wall somewhere. Hire capability teammates, hire them for your company. You have to have no ego to achieve any great outcome. The mindset of finding someone smarter than yourself is key to growth, and compete with the best in the world to become world-class. Where can our audience find out more about you, Michelle?
I love that. There was an article written by Obvious Ventures that I think captures these things about me, I'm happy to send you the link. I think it's called The Unstoppable Determination of Michelle Longmire. Again, coming back to my actual primary strength, which is just sheer determination.
Well, and Michelle, what was it called again? The what?
I think it's called The Unstoppable Determination of Michelle Longmire. Someone actually just sent it to me like 2 days ago, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a cool article. Because again, I think one of the like things to debunk is like you see people doing this job, who are the greatest in the world. I think there's no doubt they're super talented, I'm sure. But really, it's determination that makes the entrepreneur. And I just feel like more people, should know they've got what it takes to build a company. Then I think that article captures my determination well.
Awesome. You know what? You wear it on your sleeve. All right. We can see it in your eyes and your passion and your excitement and energy. I can feel the energy from California to Florida where I'm at. Okay. So
Thank you.
You're the type of person, so many people are going to want to work with because of who you are and who you're going to continue to strive to be. And so it's going to be fun to watch you just continue to light the world on fire. So,
thanks, Gary. It's been really exciting to talk with you. And, I love all of the value you've created. It's so amazing. It makes me think, you can never put boundaries to where you can go with solving hard problems because there's so many out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really, what I like to say is, there's no other place in the world we can do what I've done and what you're doing, right? What you've done and you're doing. But the American dream is alive and well, and we got to keep it that way. And just like you are going to inspire people, women and entrepreneurs all over on a constant basis as they meet you and understand your story, right? We as entrepreneurs and small business, people, leaders, right, need to inspire small business and constantly be aware of the regulatory environment and the pressure that will put on the future entrepreneurs, right? So again, what you're doing in creating, creating success by solving problems like nobody in your space that I've seen. What we do in our space, you can't just do that if you don't have a free market system like we have in America. So
we're so lucky. I think about that so much, and you think these things are your own, skills. It's like, no, the environment is a really, really critical success factor. And in fact, it's what sets the stage. And I think it's a really unique part of, being American and frankly, all of the team members we have across the world, I think, do benefit from that. This is a really, you can make your own reality. You can build your own company. You can set your sights very high. And if you go after it, you'll surprise yourself with how far you get. It's a pretty unique environment. And I hope to do that in more places around the world in the future.
Think about the young minds and again, small percentage of people have minds like yours, in my opinion. From now, you won't say this or admit this, but I'm confident of that. But the minds that are like yours in other parts of the world, like Russia, China, wherever, they don't have this opportunity, right? They can't visualize and dream as big as you and I do, right? And solve problems as easy as you and I do. So again, I appreciate people like you, and I'm going to continue to. I do things on the, besides philanthropic stuff, I do things that fight for the American dream and go at and really kind of fight bad regulation that hurts and stunts small business. And no matter how big you get in your business, and you're going to get really big, how big I get in my business, I'll never forget, and I hope you never forget what it took to start. And instead of like being okay with stunting the next Michelle, right? Instead of stunting, lifting up the next Michelle always, right? And America has the ability to do that. The American dream, is something that gives the ability to do that. So, so thank you so much for being on our show. I really appreciate it. You're an all-star, and you're going to inspire so many people in your life. I can't wait to see it as you continue to do that. If I'm ever in California, I will look you up. And if you're ever in Florida or Chicago, look us up, okay?
I will for sure. Thank you so much. So fun, Gary, Chris. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for being on DDCEO, Michelle. You're awesome, and thank you so much.